this world.
Hey there guys, welcome to the Comics Crusade once again. We are near the end of August, and boy do we have some interesting stuff to do. And as you can see, you are seeing my face instead of my animated avatar, and that's because on this channel we're about to go through some changes, to say the least. You're probably wondering why. Micah, why are you ditching your animated avatar? Well, to be honest, this means I have to edit less video, and when your schedule includes working a full-time job and working out a lot more than you used to, and writing a comic book of your own, among other things, and just adulting, I don't really have a lot of time to just shift different facial expressions from to so yeah. Needless to say, it's going to be a little bit more of just sort of a straight vlog style. I'm not going to do as much editing, just the stuff that makes sense to edit. But I'll also have to try to make sure to speak more concisely so that I don't have to edit as much. Okay. So, question for the week for you in the audience. How do you feel about comic book decompression? I rant about it quite a bit because I'm not a fan. I think if you're going to push a book that's supposed to be issue by issue by issue, then as a writer, you should write for every individual issue. And the question should always be, am I starting this comic off right, and am I ending it correctly? Am I ending it in a way that's going to make somebody go, want to buy the next issue that comes out? The problem that I have, of course, with decompression is that you're writing for trade paperbacks. And even then, there are some people who do write for trades that are decompressed that at least know how to end a comic properly, like Jonathan Hickman, for example. But I want to get your guys' opinions on it. So please go ahead and leave a comment down in the comment section below. And I'm stumbling over my words. My apologies already. But I would like to hear your thoughts on that. But let's go ahead and get straight to the books. We've got some good stuff, and we got some very bad stuff. So let's start off with... What am I starting with? Oh. Bendis. Yay. Action Comics 1002. You know, I am not a fan of Brian Michael Bendis for obvious reasons. But this comic really especially just starts off with one of the worst pages I've seen ever. It starts off as sort of an attempted deconstruction of the look up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. No, it's Superman. But instead, it's a bird, you jackass. It's a plane. People in Metropolis hate each other. Random black guy says that another black guy falling from the sky is going to scar him, and I hate this book already. And the thought that is apparently tap 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 from the last comic. It thinks that Superman would actually throw a gangster to his death because reasons. Why? Brian Michael Bendis, you're a terrible writer because Bendis. And what I find interesting is just Perry White calling her out on her bullshit. Look. I understand what Bendis is trying to do here, but without giving us a reason for this person to think that Superman is randomly capable of murder, we're looking at Batman v Superman levels of shit tier writing here. You've got to give us more, Brian. So, Perry White apparently speaking for the audience. Anyway, long story short is Superman goes out into the criminal underworld to try to figure it out. There's also a mobster who gets murdered by the Guardian, apparently. I didn't know that the Guardian had gone bad. And then there's the Red Cloud that we don't quite know what it is, and really that's just sort of the long and short of it when it comes right down to it. The most entertaining part of the book, the one that I actually did like, was there's a part in this where Clark goes to a shoddy bar, dressed rather shoddily himself, and oddly enough manages to get the story, basically, about what happened to this criminal that was thrown by forces unknown, and oddly enough just solves the mystery of who's lighting the fires for himself. So needless to say, it's kind of interesting that they, oh, I don't know, wrap that up so quickly, but at least he's moving on from what honestly was kind of a dumb plot. And then Superman goes out and randomly punches meteors, again, randomly. And then not much of else goes on, except we find out that Lois Lane is putting out a book. The comic book ends with Lois Lane in a blonde wig in a seedy part of Metropolis, looking like she's leaving either a club or a strip club. But she's, well, no, I'm probably wrong there. It actually looks like a burger place. Sorry, I'm expecting some Bendising here, because why on earth would Lois Lane be walking around in short shorts and a blonde wig, and Superman be not happy to see her? My initial thought was, uh-oh, Bendis did it because Bendis. Bendis made Lois a thought. Bendis made Lois a bit hoish because Bendis. I'm genuinely wondering where this is going, but not for good reasons. That's the funny part. Is like, this looks like it's gonna be trash. That Bendis, being as bad as he is these days, is not going to have a reason for exactly why Lois Lane is dressed in short shorts, might as well be hot pants, in a seedier part of Metropolis. And why on earth would Superman, in the middle of a crowd, mind you, confront her on this, and then her reveal herself in the midst of this crowd and say, "Hi, honey," to Superman, for better or worse revealing that Lois Lane is in a relationship with Superman to the public, even though they didn't know that before. Why is that all trash? We know why. We know exactly why. It rhymes with Mika's Mendes. This book kind of sucked. It really did. Not much happened. It ends, at least, on somewhat of an interesting cliffhanger, but the problem with the cliffhanger is the cliffhanger comes out of nowhere. I'm more interested in the Red Cloud. I'm more interested in the villain. I'm not really that interested because up to this point, it seems like Lois has been a non-factor. Because Brian Michael Bendis can't decide what he really wants to do with that story, at least not so far. But then again, the next issue could be a 23-page comic of a conversation between the two of them where Superman does the same gag of running off randomly and punching something. Don't buy this comic. I'm moving on. I fucking hate Brian Michael Bendis on Superman. It is one of the worst things to happen to Superman in a long, long time. And I'm going to keep covering it. I'm going to keep dealing with the pain so you don't have to. Let's move on to Detective Comics number 987. So I was wrong last time, and apparently there is going to be more of Brian Edward Hill on Detective Comics. But that's a good thing. I like Brian Edward Hill. I like his treatment of fans, and I like what he's doing with this Batman book. It's a shame, again, that this is going to be his last issue, even though I thought the last issue was his last issue. Anyway, we have ourselves another hostage situation, and we finally get a one-on-one confrontation between Batman and Karma. And really, I think a much more solid answer through action of Batman's beliefs of whether he truly is weaker or stronger when he has backup, when he has his Bat family around him. And Brian Edward Hill really has a great just grasp on this character. And a great grasp really on writing a hostage situation, a great grasp on a lot of different things about writing a Bat family-oriented comic. And I'm actually kind of bummed out that this is it for him. Needless to say, Karma takes over an element of Wayne Enterprises. Batman and his team go in non-lethal, though he has to remind Katana of that. And oddly enough, it's Black Lightning who really sets the standard of what Bruce needs to do. Katana is there as well. She appeared in the last issue. She also gives him, Batman, some advice on, how he needs to take Karma down. The only thing that I don't necessarily like about it is the psychic overload. So the psychic overload is something that I am honestly a fan of myself, but I kind of feel like it does get kind of overused. Whenever somebody fights a psychic, you pour all of these terrifying thoughts into their brain, and then it disrupts the way that they think. It kind of gets, it's kind of the de facto way to beat a psychic in a comic book. Now, the thing about it is that it would make sense for Batman to do that just because of all the horrifying things that he has to deal with. So I'm a little bit more okay with it here. Needless to say, though, it ends well. It at the end of the day, it's a great comic book. Just, again, Brian Edward Hill really knows what he's doing. If you're looking for, again, just a more action-oriented Batman comic with just a touch of the sort of superhero philosophical stuff, then, yeah, this is right up your alley. So basically, for those of you who aren't fans of the way that Tom King is doing things, I think you will enjoy this book. Now, I don't know if the next arc is going to be as good, but we'll have to see what happens. Needless to say, definite recommendation. Alright, let's move over to Marvel Comics, which it seems I review a lot of them, but that's because Marvel puts out a lot more books than DC does these days. But then again, that's sort of their way of doing things, is they just flood the market instead of really knuckling down on quality. And sometimes certain writers get picked up for books that honestly shouldn't be picked up for books, and then there are some writers that kind of get, left by the wayside, aren't promoted as much. But I'll tell you what, I'm always happy to read a Spider-Man comic. Specifically, The Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows. This was actually recommended by a patron as well, so I want to thank him for recommending to me this book, because this was a lot of fun. So the background on the Renew Your Vows universe is basically that it takes place in an alternate Marvel universe where Spidey and Mary Jane not only were together, the whole Mephisto thing did not happen, but they also had a daughter together. And not Mayday, oddly enough, different daughter. And this is basically like a Spider Family book, which is something that I've always wanted to see done in the Spider-Man universe. Because you think about how many people are oriented around Spider-Man as allies and friends. You've got Pete, you've got Ben Reilly, you've got Kane, you've got, Spider-Woman and Jessica Drew, you have Arachna, which is the Jessica Carpenter Spider-Woman as well. These days, Venom is sort of like a frenemy, I guess you could say. Peter doesn't even hate the symbiote anymore. That's what's really crazy about the Dan Slott run and how that ended. But if you wanted to do a Bat Family thing with Spider-Man, and Otto Octavius is sort of like becoming an ally. You could do that if you wanted to, and that would be something that if Marvel ever approached me, which they never will because I'm a Republican, that would be something that I would do, is have that sort of an alliance in New York. Spider-Man finally nuts up and forms his own team, basically. That would be really cool to see, I think. So, needless to say, though, this book, one thing I will say is I'm not a big fan of the art. I think it's a little simplistic. It's a little messy, but you can kind of tell, again, that Marvel's not putting a lot behind this book, which is kind of unfortunate because the storytelling is really good. So up until this point, Spider-Man has been dealing with another clone situation, and lo and behold, last issue, it was revealed that none other than Mr. Sinister is the one behind it. And he's basically gone into Oscorp and stolen Norman Osborn's old cloning technology to work on it and to speed the process up. And what follows really is just a good action family comic. The powers of Spiderling, Spidey's daughter, kind of remind me, she's kind of psychic, but not quite. She also kind of reminded me in power set of Slade Wilson's daughter, Rose. So, God, that would be a crazy crossover comic. Spider-Man Renew Your Vows and Deathstroke, written by Christopher Priest. I'd read it. Anyway, needless to say, though, there is a great and well put together, despite I'm not being a big fan of the artist. Well put together, action sequence that really just is this old Spider-Man style of being thrown through walls, tons of acrobatics, Spider-Man quipping, and not only just quipping, not quipping in a cringy way. He's doing scientific quipping, which would make sense because he's a scientist. So he's a nerd. I mean, like, have him act like a nerd. I'm definitely loving this. This actually was a really good book. It was fun to read. I was, interested in what was happening page to page. I like the idea that they kind of snuck in a fuckface insult by saying faux face instead. It was just a good comic. And I didn't expect it to be. I honestly did not. So, yeah, definite recommendation. If you're looking for another Spider-Man book that feels like an old school Spider-Man book with some additional characters, I mean, you can't really go wrong here. It really is good. It really is. So, yeah, Spider-Man Renew Your Vows number 22. Pick it up. All right, let's move on to Avengers number 6. So far, every single issue of this that I have reviewed, I have been in love with because of, first off, the art. I'm a big fan of Ed McGuinness, and him being on the Avengers just fits. Second, Jason Aaron really has been on point these last, few months. I've read, there's been 4 issues of Thor, now 6 issues of the Avengers, and just about every issue that I've read, I've enjoyed to degrees. And there's something about the way he sets up the fight that's going on between the Avengers and the Celestials really, really makes it feel like there is something truly grandiose going on here. And I've loved that sort of, when Jason Aaron really knuckles down and puts 100% into a comic, you can really tell. Aiden Paladin and I were talking about this one time on a stream, that he is probably the most inconsistent writer of all time, because when he phones it in, he really phones it in. But when he knuckles down, when he gives you 100%, you can tell. So he really puts the stakes of what's going on in this book to, he lays it out for the reader perfectly. And from there, it's really just this, giant-sized Avengers fighting the Celestials in this really well-illustrated fight. And oddly enough, Jason Aaron is putting a lot of effort into the Robbie Reyes character and trying to make him more relevant in Marvel. And I will say he's doing a very good job of it. He's making me like the character. And when it comes to these diversity characters, like I said, I'm not against new characters, and I don't care what skin color they are. My problem is when they are written like tokens instead of actual characters. If you wanted to write Robbie Reyes like a token Latino kid, all you have to do is look up the best Eddie Guerrero promos ever and just copy and paste. But Jason Aaron's not doing that. He's giving us reason to care about this character. And that is something that you need to do. You need to flesh them out. You need to put them in situations where they have to be tested as people. So, needless to say, it's a definite recommendation once again. I'm really interested to see where this arc is going to end up. It looks like it's going to end up being like a 12 issue, because they just sort of figured out what needs to be done against these particular Celestials, and so on and so forth. And I'm not going to spoil how it ends, but the way that it ends is really cool. And it sees Robbie Reyes as a character step up to the plate and show who he really is as a young man. And what a great comic. Seriously. Freaking great. I love the way it ended. Thank you, Jason Aaron. Seriously. Alright, let's go ahead and move on. Hunt for Wolverine, Mystery and Madripoor number 4. So, like I've said thus far, Mystery and Madripoor is of all the Hunt for Wolverine comics, is the best one. Jim Zub right now, I think, is on a roll. He's definitely finding the rhythm of everything he's doing. And then Tony Silas and Leonard Kirk are doing the art on this. It's, like I said, it's a style that takes a little bit of adjusting, but I will say that I've really started to enjoy it. I like that they draw women like women, that they're not afraid to give them curves, that they're not afraid to make them look feminine. And Zub is not afraid to write women as women instead of men with boobs, which is how women tend to write women these days, it seems. Or at least these crappy YA writers that you find. So, long story short, we finally see how this ties into Wolverine. And for better or worse, Psylocke is able to find a piece of Logan's soul that has been trapped in one of these characters, Sapphire, I believe it is, for a long amount of time, and she's able to free it and defeat Sapphire. And in the process, Betsy actually gets her old body back, though she's obviously fully grown, if you get my drift. So everything's wrapping up properly, and at the end of the day, really, it just is a good action comic that has a great flow to it. I kind of wish that we got a little bit more of how Wolverine ties into this. I feel like you could have just called it Mystery and Madripoor and not put the Hunt for Wolverine tag on it, just called it X-Men Mystery and Madripoor, and it would have made a little bit more sense titling-wise. But needless to say, though, it is very, very well done comic. I would love to see this team of artist and writer on more X-Men books in the future. Get rid of Mark Guggenheim, because Mark Guggenheim is fucking trash. He's fucking awful. Put Jim Zub on X-Men. I want Jim Zub X-Men stuff. Fuck all the rest of this. Or maybe he's already on an X-Men book and I just haven't realized it because I'm not reading any of them at this point. But needless to say, it's a solid action title, very well done. I can't say anything more than that. I don't want to spoil how it all ends up. But if you're gonna write a female-oriented book and you're gonna treat women like women, with all the nuance and with all of the beauty and all of the flair, I'm going to buy the book. Because I fucking hate it when you cannot, for the life of you, put together a book that really feels... what's the word I'm looking for? Grounded. I mean, Marvel was always supposed to be the world outside my window, right? That was always how it was advertised to me. Make it so. Alright, let's move on to The Life of Captain Marvel #2, or as I like to call it, the retcon of Captain Marvel #2, because they are changing everything about her fucking history. It's... Alright. I hate Lifetime movies. I do. No offense to Dean Cain, I know he's been in a lot of them, but I fucking hate Lifetime movies. And this is a Lifetime movie comic. For better or worse. All the men are assholes, or effeminate, or, for better or worse, just pricks. They all want to beat women, they all want to be terrible people, so on and so forth. And what is this shit, like this page I'm showing you right now? My father, Pops, he was a worthy opponent. Who the fuck says that at a funeral, lady? The writer of this book is shit. I wish I could blame this on Brian Michael Bendis. It just is... It's not good. And then random Kree chick shows up, and then that's really about... and starts killing her way across the country for reasons unknown. Why she couldn't just show up on Captain Marvel's front door is beyond me. There's some poorly written wannabe romance shit, and apparently Carol's mom knew about her dad cheating on her with some space thought, and this book fucking sucks. It is daddy issues, the comic, which is why I call it a Lifetime comic. It's poorly written, it's not fun to read, it was painful to get through page by page, and at the end of the day, nothing happens. It's 23 pages of really, really bad dialogue. like I said, Lifetime movie. Do not buy this fucking comic. Don't buy anything by this fucking author either. Because here's the problem. You've got all of these really bad YA novelists that continue to be hired by Marvel that have absolutely no talent whatsoever. And they are being given these platforms by them to come in and ruin characters with a history to them. Carol Danvers used to be an interesting character. Little rough around the edges, little bit of a bitch, but if nothing else, she was fun to read. Now she's not. Now she is supposed to be the feminist hero. And, you know, Kurt Busiek is put out there, and I had a recent Twitter engagement with him where I basically mocked the Iron, his whole thought process of defending the soon-to-be Ironheart writer, where he tried to put out, I'm not even going to go through it, never mind, but point being is that, you know, he's like, oh, Captain Marvel's always been the feminist hero. Well, apparently, Kirk, feminists were a lot nicer 20, 30 years ago, you fucking retard. Needless to say, this is a bad comic. Don't buy it. Alright, let's move on with The Punisher. And this book was okay. That's really about it. It was okay. For better or worse, it is Punisher kills Nazis, or Hydra. And he's basically going back to, well, kill everything. The art's okay. It's called World War Frank, and my biggest problem with it is just that it's not, the dialogue's not super well written. It's just an okay comic from front to back. The art's not bad. You know, I actually, looking back through it right now, I actually do kind of like the way that the art looks. I like that it's gory. You know, it's a Punisher comic, it should be. I like that there's a level of intensity. It really is high-octane action from front to back, and I really like high-octane action in a comic book, and it's done pretty well. There's no punches pulled here, and at the end of the day, if you're gonna make a Punisher comic, that's what you should be doing. You know, there's a few just bits here and there where there's just great atmosphere to it. And for the Deus Vult part of me loves the fact that there's a section of this where Punisher is on a motorcycle with a helmet with religious imagery on it. I mean, he was a Catholic, gunning down Hydra agents. Like this, it feels like this is what the Punisher should be doing. It's just the only thing that I'm not a big fan of in it is the writing could have been better than it is. But I mean, on the flip side, Frank drops a tank on a bunch of people and uses it against them. Like, what's not to love? It feels very old school Punisher in a lot of ways. It's not, there's not a lot to it. It's a pizza. You guys know I love food comparisons, right? You know, steak is the sort of thing that is really filling and really nutritious and really good for you. And that's the kind of comic you walk away from and you feel like you have to think more about what you just read. This is not that. This is basically, you know, action. Not like Michael Bay shallow, but it's fairly shallow. But it's gory. It's pretty well put together. You know, the fight scenes are great. It's fun. I actually do recommend it. I wish it could be more than it is, but I think for it to be more than it is, it would have to be done by Garth Ennis or someone along those lines. I think you'd have to get somebody with a bit more depth. But the idea of Frank going around and assassinating a bunch of old school villains, I'm okay with it. You know, we'll see how it goes. But needless to say, yeah, if you like it, if you like what I just described to you, go pick it up. West Coast Avengers #1. So, you know all the reviews I did of the America Chavez books? This has a lot of the same problems. Self-absorbed heroes, bad attempts at humor, Everybody's a self-interested prick. The art's mediocre. It's a bunch of teen heroes. And the art is okay, but it's just trash. Like, the dialogue is bad. It's millennials whining. Millennials whining for page after page after page. And there's a part that I'm supposed to laugh at. Social justice warriors are not funny. They're not funny people. And the things that they think are funny are not funny. These are people who liked Michelle Wolf. And there's this spread where she's auditioning different heroes. And at least Gwenpool shows up, but even then she's not funny. And then they start a documentary reality show, and you want to know something? New Warriors did it a long time ago, and it wasn't that great then either. It's just bad. Just bad teen drama, and my soul has left my body, and it ends with Giant Tigra, who apparently has been grown larger, and yet somehow they took away her chest. So I don't know what the hell happened there. And then it ends with Brodock. And the next is called Oh No Doc. Kelly Thompson is a terrible writer and should be fired. This book sucks. Don't buy it. Encourage your LCL not to place orders for it. Unless somebody really wants it. In which case, pray for them. Pray for their sanity. Alright, let's close out on something that's worthwhile. Venom! So, I love Venom, as many of you already know. And there's something interesting about Donny Cates and the way he's putting together things. And oddly enough, I like how he writes Miles Morales too. And I like how there's discussion between him and the symbiote, and I like that things are starting to move forward with the symbiote as well, and he's starting to get his head together. And there's this spread of Venom in this book. God, Ryan Stegman's such a great artist, of Venom with wings, and it looks so fucking 90s, but so freaking cool. And I'm up and down when it comes to this book. I really am, because it really does feel like it's being written for trades. But at the same time, man, some of these issues are just so well done and so interesting. And this fight between Null and Venom is going to be really cool. The dialogue between Eddie and the symbiote is very well written, because the symbiote now has its mind right as well. And, Donny Cates is a great horror writer. And he really feels like he's knuckling down on the idea of Venom as a sort of, Tomb of Dracula style horror book. And it's really feeling like that. And it's starting to all get pieced together. And I feel like a lot of my complaints about the book up to this point are disappearing. And I have a feeling that by issue 6, I'm going to be hooked on this comic permanently. Donny Cates is a great writer. He's a great young talent at Marvel. And I think that he needs to consistently be pushed as probably the biggest and best thing going on at Marvel right now. The only thing I was not super big on is that there were a couple of points where Ryan Stegman gave Venom the underbite. I don't like that look on Venom. I am much more of a fan of the Venom with, the how we're gonna see him in the movie, and how Mark Bagley drew him as just a skull. So that this sixth issue is gonna be crazy. We'll just put it that way. It really feels like this Venom is the best thing going at Marvel right now. He really is. And that's why I'm praying that the movie's good too, because this is a character that we can, that they can ride forward as something that, adults can read, and really enjoy. I don't want to spoil anything, because there's some elements to this that are really cool, but needless to say, if you're not reading Venom right now, you should be. This should be on your pull list every frickin' month. Alright guys, that brings us to the end of the Comics Crusade for this week. Tell me what you thought. Are there any other books that you thought that I should have picked up? One thing I will say right now is that The Sentry is actually off of my pull list now due to recent comments by Jeff Lemire. Jeff, if you're going to lie about people like myself and our motivations when it comes to comic books, I'm not reading your comics, and I'm not going to give you a platform either, to say the least. But anyway, guys, again, back to your to the question I wanted to know from you. Give me your thoughts. What are your thoughts on comics that are decompressed? Are they sort of a risk? Are they something that you don't mind? Let me know what you think. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We will return next week, but until that time, my name is Micah Curtis. I'll see you then. Dave's Fault.